Welcome back, and today we're going to take our first look at Adobe Lightroom Classic. Now, before we get started, I want to explain a confusion that a lot of people have. So there's actually two different Lightrooms when you go to the Adobe Creative Cloud. One is Lightroom CC and the other is Classic. And Classic sounds like some sort of an old version, but it's not an old version. It's really optimized to work off of a desktop or a laptop computer. The other is made to work off something like a tablet, a phone. However, you could use it on a computer, but what it does is it stores your images in the cloud and you're working off the cloud to work with them. So what we're taking a look is the desktop laptop version. And it does something that's a little bit different. It creates what we call a catalog in photography. And a catalog is just fancy terminology. It saves a lot of information in a database, so it's easily accessible and organized. And I'm not a huge fan of it, but what I'll do is I'll explain what it does and why, and then I'll tell you why for me it doesn't work. However, for other people, it might work really well. This is Adobe Lightroom Classic. It's downloaded. Notice that it says Classic. And when you download this, you're going to have two different things. When you download Lightroom, you're going to have a section, and notice mine is in the Pictures folder and then Lightroom. And it has something up here for backing up, and the backing up is for your catalog. You'll notice down here we have two different things. One is this LCAT that we see right here, and the other is the data. So one is the catalog and the other is the database that we have. So if you're wondering where the database and catalog is stored, this is the location that it's stored. You'll notice that I have some old catalogs and they do update every so often. If we come back here to Adobe Lightroom Classic, we're going to take a look at the preferences, but what I want to explain to you is what issues you can run into. And I see this a lot because I teach and we have those issues there. And that with a catalog, it works great. It makes it really easy to come up here and search and find stuff or create collections so that you can easily find and access your images. However, if you ever move the location of those images, you won't be able to find them. And that's because Lightroom relies on what we call a path, okay? And the path is where are they located. So a path could be my computer, all right? And then my pictures folder. And then inside of the pictures folder, I might create a folder. Let's say I take pictures of my dog and the folder is called dog. And then inside of that are going to be all of my images. If I take that and move it from the pictures folder to the music folder, the path will change and Lightroom will not be able to find the photos. And it will basically give you a little exclamation mark saying, hey, I can't find the photos. Now, you can fix that by pointing it to the new location. But in my circumstance, I do a high volume of photos. And I only have them on the working hard drive that I use for a little bit of time. Once they're done, I move them. So my catalog is constantly trying to find stuff that doesn't exist anymore. So that can be an issue. If you don't move anything, you leave everything where it is, it works perfectly fine. However, if you work in a high volume situation where you have a lot of stuff and you're constantly moving it, you're going to need to point it to the new path. I don't need the catalog. I don't want to use the catalog. And so it causes me issues. Just so people understand, when I talk about a catalog, that's what's happening. So the first thing we need to do before we work on any program is quickly go into the preferences. So I'm going to go into Lightroom Classic and go down to Preferences. This is a Mac. I do not know if they are in the same location for a PC. What we're going to do is there's lots of information. I'm not going to bore you with all the different settings that you can go in here and apply. You can go through. By default, most of the things are set up exactly the way you need them. So if we come in here to General, yeah, there's nothing that we need to see. When we go to Presets, so right here, we've got the Adobe default. So I would select that. And that has to do with profiles when we start to go into the develop module. So the default is Adobe. I would leave that. And this is the main one that you need to change. So you need to go into external editing and tell it what you want to do if you were to send a image out of Lightroom. So if I wanted to manipulate or edit an image inside of Adobe Photoshop, you'll notice I've put Photoshop, the version, what format do I want, a PSD, what color profile, what bit depth, and what resolution. And you also have an additional external editor. So if you're using two, you can pick a second one. That's basically all you really need to come in here and change. The rest are performance and what things look like. You'll be good to go just by changing that one. So we have this image, and right here, I have a compact flash card. And so this is what the few images that I've downloaded are on. And the way this works is if you open Lightroom Classic first, and then put your card in, the import function is going to pop up automatically. However, if you put your card in first and then open Lightroom Classic, it's not going to open up. So you would need to come in here, put your card, and click the little import. So give me a second. I'm trying not to bang anything. And we did that, and it should automatically launch those images if it reads. All right, so it did not recognize my images that I have on this. So all I did was simply go into the EOS digital folder right here that pops up, and I went inside and I clicked on the folder that had the images, and just like that, the images that I've downloaded are ready to go. So it's automatically going to import your images. If it doesn't for some reason, they won't show up here. So I'm getting my phone in my EOS digital card. What you can do is just simply click this again and see if it is mounted. Sometimes when you put SD cards in specifically, I see this all the time, they don't mount. So take it out, put it back in, and then hopefully it should appear and load your images onto the program here. So the next step is to go through the import process. And I call this ingest, but you could call it import as well. And so what we have is right over here is the location of where our photos are. And what we want to do is we want to move those images to a new location. You don't really want to work off your card. Your SD card's the weak link in the process, so you don't really want to work off an SD card. You want to move those to a hard drive, and then in all likelihood, you should back up your images and duplicate them onto a second hard drive in case something goes wrong with that hard drive. So this is our SD card. These are the images that we have on it. And I'm going to hit Command A because we want to select them all. Now you'll notice down here, you can uncheck all or you can check all. So you have the ability to decide which images that you select or don't select by coming down here, or you could manually select these as well. All right. Right here, we have a sorting method. So how do we want to sort these images? If you had a whole bunch of images on your card because you didn't delete them, which I suggest you never do, you could come here and say capture time, and the ones that were captured most recently would show up on the top level. Up here, we have a couple of different options. And so this is asking us what we want to do. So do we want to copy as a DNG? Do we want to copy? Do we want to move? Or do we want to add? So we have two different options when it comes to moving our images over. In this case, I have JPEG files, so it's just going to move them as a JPEG. But normally I am shooting RAW files. And so RAW files work like this. If you import your RAW files, they're going to have a RAW file extension like cr2.nef for Nikon. And when it moves them, it will keep that extension. But what happens is once you start editing in Lightroom, because you can't actually overwrite or change or do anything to a RAW file, which is a great thing, it creates what we call the XMP file, which is a sidecar file. So if your file is called dog.cr2, it's going to create a new file called dog.xmp. And that XMP is just simply a text file. It is a sidecar file to the original file. So any adjustments that you make inside of Lightroom, you don't actually save if it's a RAW file. It saves them in that XMP file. So next time that you open your files up, it's going to automatically see the adjustments that you already made. If you were to delete the XMP file, you don't delete your image, you just delete any metadata or adjustments that you've done to the image. And people freak out because they see these duplicate files and they don't want them because they're going to waste space. Well, they're teeny tiny. They're usually 2 to 4K. They don't take up a lot of room. It's just a basic text file. happens is some people just don't want to see that. And what you can do is you can create a DNG file, and you'll do this over here. We'll see it. We can create a DNG, and inside of the DNG, it hides that XMP file inside of that file. So you don't see it. It's still there, but you don't see it. And that seems to make some people a little bit happy. So that's the difference. In my case, we're just going to copy because I love XMP files. And over here is going to be the location of where I want to move them. So right now I have it set up that these are going into my pictures folder on my hard drive. Now I would suggest to new people to buy an external hard drive. And so if you can see over here, I've got an external hard drive. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select it. So that's my external hard drive. That's my working hard drive that I work off of, so that they're not filling up and wasting space inside of my internal hard drive. So this is the location of where we're going to go. So you just click here and you can select any location that you have to upload those images. However, you cannot upload to a server or a cloud service. It has to be a local hard drive or external hard drive. Next thing we need to do, since we've selected our images, we've picked where we want them to go, is to come up here under file handling. So under file handling, we have build smart previews. We have don't import suspected duplicates. And remember, the reason it has that is because when you import, if you don't delete the images off your card the next time you go, it will just keep re-importing the same photos over and over again. So it will be able to analyze and see that, oh, you've already done this. Do you want me to import them again? You could select import suspected duplicates. Now, I don't have mine on because sometimes I want to do that. Below that, we have make a second copy. So up here where we chose a location, we could actually click this and select another location so that you do it in two completely different locations. I'm not going to back these up. I'm not going to do it. And usually I just manually drag and drop it onto the new location, but I do back up everything. Add to an auto collection. So collections are over here and we'll get to those later, but it's just a place to store like images or images that you like. In this case, we're not going to do that. So up here, I forgot to do this. It says build previews and it's on standard. We have the option to do small ones, which will take up less space on your computer. Embed a sidecar. This is typically a preview that is a sidecar file. I don't want to do that. A standard preview or 1:1, which is full resolution, and that would take up a ton of space. I just leave mine on standard. Feel free to try them out. So one thing I want you to realize is when you build these previews, it stores them in the image cache, and most likely your image cache is on your internal hard drive. And it will create a massive amount of space on your computer. And eventually you're going to get the scratch disk is full. And what that means is your internal hard drive is full and it can't do anything anymore. There is a way to go in here and delete those image cache files. Basically, it doesn't want to have to create a new one all the time. So it stores it in a cache. So it's quickly accessible. All right. And you can control how long it stores it there for a day, 2 days, months, 3 months, a year, whatever you want. But what happens is people get these massive files and they eat up all their computer. So I do have a video on another site, and I'll be creating a video here essentially, and I'll show you how to remove those previews once you get millions of them and you're not using them anymore. So the next thing that we have is to rename the files. So usually when your images come out, now I've downloaded these, but they come up with a bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't mean anything. So it's usually a bunch of letters and numbers, and they don't stand for anything. So what you want to do is you want to rename your files so that they're searchable. Because remember, we're creating a catalog. If I take photos of my trip to Ireland and I name them Trip to Ireland, I can then search for Trip to Ireland and it's going to find my photos really easily if I can't remember where I put them. We're going to come up here and go to template, and I prefer name and sequence, and that's just going to be the name that I give them here. And so this is for a tutorial, so we'll just call these tutorial. And then right below it, it says start with number 1. And so the first one's going to be tutorial 1, then tutorial 2, then tutorial 3, and so on. And very logical, right? And it makes it easier to find things. So one of the issues that people don't do in the beginning is they don't have a workflow. And then 5 years later, they're trying to find their photos and they can't find anything. Doing folder names and naming your files is one step closer to making your life easier. Down here, so we've got the file extension, and we're just going to put leave as is because that's what we want. In this case, mine's a JPEG. Next, apply during import. And so right now I have developed settings and I don't have anything. And what this does is it allows you to apply a preset to the image, and it just lets you do them all. So if you wanted to convert these all to black and white, you could pick one of the black and white presets and it would convert them all. It doesn't make them black and white, and you can go back in time to fix this because all of this stuff is what we call non-destructible. I don't use that because you can just apply it after the fact and it's just as easy. I want to have my images the way I shot them when I import them from my SD card to my new hard drive. The next is metadata, and you can see I have a whole bunch of metadata templates here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new one just so you know what this means. And metadata is information that's stored on each and every photo that you have. So in journalism, this is super popular because you need to fill out a caption and all this information. But you can see all kinds of crazy fields right here that you can fill out. And guess what? I fill out a ton of those. But right now we have a copyright status. I'm going to put copyrighted, even though I didn't take these photos. So I'm going to just put unknown because I don't know who the people were. And I'm going to give this preset a name. And so I'll call this tutorial. All right. You would put your name. And the cool thing is once you've set this up once, you don't have to do it again. So I can come in here and add the name. So we will put Shutterbug Academy. You would normally not put your business name, but you could put your real name. And you just want to go through here and you can fill out all this information. That way, if somebody wants to contact you about the image, they can. If you need to give people information about it and even more, it also can apply to search engine optimization. If you don't know anything about search engine optimization, it might be something you want to start looking at if you're going to create a website, because Google uses search engine optimization to look at your image to find out what it is. It can't see the photo, so you add text to your image to let Google know what the image is about. All right. So we would go through, and I'm not going to fill out all this stuff because we don't have that much time. I'm going to hit create. And the cool thing is, since I've created this template and I could put keywords and all kinds of different information in here, it's going to apply it to each and every image as we import. That's what the metadata template does. If you don't want to do one, don't do it. All right, the next thing that we have down here, and I had to just change this because I have mine on a different setting, is by default, this goes into by date. Probably don't want that. So if you went somewhere and you took a few photos today and a few photos the next day and a few photos the next day, it's going to, when you import them, it's going to put each day in a different folder. And that would be difficult. So if they're all the same thing, you just want them in one folder. So you don't want that. So you're going to change this into one folder. So the way this works is I want my full images to go into this SSD that we have up here, but I want them to go into a folder within this drive. Otherwise, they would just be a million photos all in that drive and it would be disorganized. I want them to go into a folder and I want to name that folder. So clicking into subfolder right here is going to allow me to do that. So I'm going to name this and I'm going to call these tutorial. And usually I add a date. So I add a name and then a date, and today's date is 10-22-2024. Now I want to show you something. A lot of people, actually most people, just do a little back or forward slash for the date, and you can see how it turned red it does not like that character. So use a dash or an underscore. Otherwise it will turn red and won't let you do that. So now my images are going to go here into this folder and I'm done. I can simply just hit import. And the way this works is you can see 2 operations in progress and it's going fast. The first is to do the import and the second is to build the preview. So you can see it saying building standard previews. So it's building the preview so that we can view it. Because right down here, right now we're got our thumbnail images, but we're viewing in a grid. I can click this little loop view that we see right here. So I've chosen this loop view and then what does it do? Well, it displays my image big so I can actually see what in the world it looks like. So we've got our thumbnails here and our big images up here. We can control the size of these previews. So if you come in here, watch my cursor change from the pointer arrow to that symbol. So it's like a line with an arrow this way and an arrow this way. If I click on that and go up, it gets bigger, and go down, it gets smaller. And then you can simply just click on your first image and then your next image and then your next image and toggle through. And that's it. So go ahead and practice that a few times. That is how you import inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic and take your images from your SD card and then move them to a hard drive. And just one suggestion, after you are done with this, don't leave them on your SD card forever. Stick your SD card in your camera and reformat it. Do not delete, it causes fragmentation. Reformat your camera and make sure that your images are duplicated on a backup drive. And if you can do it on the cloud, that's even better. So that's it for this first tutorial on Adobe Lightroom Classic. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day.